Who should actually put a Thdeukoty mini PC with a 13th Gen i9 in their workflow? Who would be better off with a conventional tower? And does the price make sense for someone just looking to replace a mediocre desktop? If you're on the fence because the specs look insane but the box is only a coffee-sized cube, you're not alone. The decision feels a lot like picking a sports car for city commuting. You have the power, but you need to know if the roads you travel on can really take advantage of it. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First, let's talk about the kind of buyer who actually benefits from cramming a 14-core, 20-thread i9-13900H into a 5.75.71.8-inch chassis. I've spoken with a few freelancers who work on video editing, 3D rendering, and heavy spreadsheet calculations. Their daily routine is pull a raw 4K clip from a camera, drop it into Premiere Pro, run a couple of color grade nodes, and then export a short preview while the full render finishes overnight. For them, the bottleneck isn't the CPU alone, it's also memory bandwidth and storage speed. The Thdeukoty mini PC ships with DDR5 support up to 64 GB and an NVMe slot that can hold a 4 TB drive. In a real-world test, moving a 30 GB project file from one folder to another took under 10 seconds, noticeably faster than the 30-second drags you see on many older laptops. That speed matters when you're constantly shuffling large media files. Now, consider the opposite side, the user who mainly browses the web, checks email, and streams YouTube. For that person, spending money on an i9-13900H is overkill. A mid-range Intel Core i5 or even a good AMD Ryzen 5 in a standard desktop would handle those tasks with plenty of headroom, and at a fraction of the cost. The mini PC's high-end CPU also brings a trade-off in thermals. The unit uses a single fan design that, according to the manufacturer's thermal diagrams, can keep the chip under 85 C under sustained load. In practice, I ran a 30-minute blender stress test and watched the fan spin up to a whine that's audible from across the room. If your office is a quiet zone or you plan to mount the box under a desk, that fan noise could become a distraction. It's not a scream, but it's definitely present, unlike the near-silent operation you get from a well-cooled tower. Port selection is where the mini PC actually shines for a certain niche. It packs dual 2.5 gigabits Ethernet, Wi-Fi 6E, Bluetooth 5.3, and the weirdly generous trio of USB 4, HDMI, and DisplayPort outputs. I set up a triple monitor workstation, two 1440p panels via HDMI and DP, and a 4K ultra-wide through the USB 4 hub without needing any external adapters. That configuration would have required a docking station on a laptop, adding cost and another point of failure. For anyone who needs to run multiple displays for stock tickers, code editors, and design tools, this is a genuine convenience. Upgradability is another practical question. The chassis is a small square, but it does open easily with a thumbscrew. Inside, you'll find two DDR5 slots and a single M.2 2280 slot. If you start with 16 GB of RAM, you can add another 32 GB stick later without soldering anything. The storage slot is a standard NVMe interface, meaning you can swap the 4 TB drive for a faster PCIe 4.0 module if you ever need that extra speed. The downside is that there's no room for a second SSD, so you can't set up a RAID or a dedicated scratch drive without an external enclosure, something a larger tower would accommodate without question. All of these details come together when you think about value for money. The price tag sits in the high three-figure range, which is a big jump from a typical mini PC that might have an i5 or i7. If you're a content creator who needs a compact workstation that can sit on a VESA mount behind a monitor, the ability to keep the whole system out of the way while still having desktop-class performance makes the cost easier to justify. On the other hand, if you already own a decent tower that can be upgraded with more RAM and a faster SSD, you'll likely get better thermals, quieter operation, and more expansion options for less money. Let's walk through a concrete scenario. Imagine a freelance motion graphics artist who travels between client sites and needs a portable powerhouse. The Thdeukoty mini PC weighs about 2.5 kilograms and can be packed into a hard case alongside a 27-inch monitor. At the client's office, they plug it into the wall, connect the monitor, and start rendering a 15-second intro clip in After Effects. Because the i9-13900H has a high boost clock and the DDR5 memory can feed data quickly, the render completes in roughly half the time a comparable laptop would take. The artist then shuts down, packs the unit, and moves on. In that workflow, the size, speed, and multiple display outputs directly translate into earned income. Contrast that with a home office user who primarily uses Microsoft Office, occasional Zoom calls, and a bit of Photoshop. They would save